So recently we've been streaming a lot of Division 1 on the main channel, and a lot of people, the biggest comment I hear is the Division 1 looks so much better. But does it really? Today we're going to be watching a video by Nick930. We're going to be reacting to this. It's Division 2 versus the Division direct comparison. He is known for these, so let's see what he has to say and see if the Division 1 does look better or does the Division 2. Let's get into it now.
In today's episode, we're looking at the recently released Tom Clancy's The Division 2, and seeing how it compares to its 2016 predecessor, Tom Clancy's The Division. For this comparison, both games are being run on the PC, with a native 1440p resolution, and the settings will be pushed as high as possible with the motion blur disabled for the sake of image clarity. In order to fairly compare these two games, I tried my best to match up the time of day and the weather, but due to the first game taking place in the winter and the second game taking place during the summer, we're going to see a drastic change in not just the aesthetic, but the types of effects used.
Okay.
First up, let's look at our character models. They're not necessarily the best looking character models in gaming, and in fact are pretty basic in terms of their animation quality. And
this is something I hope that they improve whenever we do get in the next division. I hope we get a little bit more character models, something a little bit different. I feel like Division 2 did improve on Division 1, but yeah, it's still very basic.
Overall complexity. But I have to give credit to Ubisoft for delivering some nice high-resolution textures and great detail to the game's many clothing options. The Division 2.
That is something that the Division has always done. Whether it was winter or summer, clothing has always been pretty solid on this game. A lot of different types of clothes. You could always spec out your agent however you want. So I've never really been disappointed with how my character looks in this game.
2 seems to be more of the same in this department, with some pretty basic looking characters equipped with some nice high resolution details. Of course, the biggest difference here is the overall style of the clothing. Now that we're running around Washington, D.C. in the summer, players will no longer be equipping heavy coats, scarves, and thermal shirts, but instead will sport short sleeves, shorts, and even some green camouflaged armor.
Okay.
But I also wanted to take a look at the animation design. While the facial animations aren't all that impressive, the Division's cover-to-cover movement animations look great, and are some of the most smooth I've seen in this style of game.
I agree. Division 1, Division 2, Tom Clancy Division series, their cover-to-cover is probably some of the best cover-to-cover movement. I can't even think of another game that pulls off cover-to-cover like the Division. Like, if somebody knows, let me know in the comments.
The Division 2 carries over a lot of those exact same animations, but I did find that the vaulting animation has been altered slightly for the next game. In the original game, the player would lead with their right foot, but in the Division 2, the character throws their entire body over the wall more fluidly, somewhat speeding up the action.
It's kind of cool.
Other actions like going from cover to cover also feel more fluid at times, but it's still the same idea. Another nice improvement in the Division 2 is the improved ragdolls for defeated enemies. Defeated enemies in the original game had their ragdoll physics locked to 30 Hz, which could look pretty jarring on higher framerate machines. The Division 2 seems to have upped this to a locked 60 Hz, making it much less noticeable. The environment, on the other hand, offers much more noticeable changes. Rather than the snowy, abandoned streets of New York City, the Division 2 opts for a warmer, summertime setting on the streets of Washington, D.C. This creates a very different feel and aesthetic to the Division 2 that, despite the still urban setting, offers a fresh new experience. Now that the snow has melted away, we can see a significant increase in the amount of detail in the environment, from dense foliage to an increased amount of trash and debris littering the streets.
I actually talked about that on stream the other day, and we talked about how a lot of people say the Division 1 looks so much better, but a lot of the area is covered with snow, right? So you don't really see all the details that when there's no snow, you actually have to fill that in with details, right? And if you go back and play the Division 2, you can notice those small details, and depending on if you're on PC or on console, it could depend on how good that looks, right? So something to keep in mind that I feel that Division 2, while it might not be set in that beautiful winter cold weather that we all love from Division 1, well, Division 2 actually puts in a lot of details that we wouldn't have gotten in Division 1.
It's surprising how much Ubisoft was able to cram into the environments in this game, and it feels like a genuine apocalypse. While the vehicle models are all remade from the ground up, I did want to say that the texture resolution to things like the tires and panels on the car all appear a bit crisper now, and things like jersey barriers or just the rows themselves all feature a significant bump in detail.
Looks better.
Next up, let's look at the lighting effects. The Division 1's lighting looked incredible, especially thanks to the occasional heavy snowfall that helped to really bring out the volumetric lighting capabilities.
Yep.
These effects appear to have been carried over into the Division 2, but due to the game's setting, they won't feel as exaggerated. Occasionally, thick.
And that's what I say, like the snow really is what causes the game to look really, really crisp, really beautiful. And like you kind of see that fog come in, the snow hitting, even the lights in the background. And you have that in Division 2. It's just we don't have the snow and the weather that kind of doesn't like exaggerate it a little bit more that you see in Division 1.
Morning fogs and heavy rainfall will help to generate a similar appearance, but obviously never to the same degree. However, the one advantage the Division 2 does have is the increased amount of foliage in various areas of the map, which create much more complex and impressive lighting situations. The Division 2's summer setting also lends itself to an increased color palette, which really helps to make it stand out more. But what's important to understand here is that the lighting hasn't changed, only the environment around it has. This really would just boil down to preference, as they both look incredible. All of this also applies to the shadow quality. The shadows have a little bit of a shimmer to them when viewed up close in both games, but they still appear fairly realistic, and are even more impressive in the Division 2 thanks to the shadows cast by various large trees and leaves in the park areas. Now, let's talk about the game's many special effects. Here's where the Division 2 has made a few noticeable improvements. First, the destruction and physics. The Division 1 allowed players to interact with several environmental props like boxes, bottles, and even close car doors or shoot tires out. The Division 2 carries all of those cool immersive effects over and also appears to expand on them. The cars, for example, now feature more destructive headlights and windshields, something that appeared pretty lackluster in the original game. I also noticed an increased amount of...
That's actually shocking. I didn't know the Division 1. I know the Division 1 has it, but Division 2, you see how much detail was in there when the windows were shattering? That's kind of cool.
Of movable debris in the Division 2, though it's difficult to really say for sure if this is the case. The fire effects seem to be exactly the same between both games, though because of the game's different lighting and camera filter, there is a noticeable change in the amount of saturation and overall image contrast, making the Division 2 appear much more vibrant and colorful. Again, this would really just boil down to aesthetic preference. Water, on the other hand, is where the Division 2 seems to shine. The Division 1 had little to no water effects in its recreation of New York City, but the Division 2 incorporates some nice deep puddles that properly react to both player and AI interaction. It's not the best water simulation out there, but it's a noticeable step up from the water effects that can be seen occasionally in the original game. Weather also plays a very big role in the graphical design of the Division. The Division 1 has randomized snowstorms that would occur, sometimes significantly reducing visibility and even building up on the environment and the character model with a light layer of snow. The Division 2 features some summer thunderstorms instead, with heavy rainfall and some nice shader effects to the various character models that make them appear wet. The effects have seen a few upgrades in the Division 2, and many of them seem to be a direct result of this new setting. Though that increased amount of destruction is definitely a nice improvement, especially considering how this destruction was reduced from the original 2013 E3 demo that I analyzed in my previous video. Finally, let's wrap up with a few brief sound comparisons. Which game do you think has the better overall sound design?
To me, I think it's Division 1. Just listen. This is where it gets me, like the snow. When you hear the snow, the wind, the sirens going off in the background. Kind of don't get that from here. Sounds like you're isolated.
And that wraps up this episode of Direct Comparison. The Division 2 appears to borrow a ton of elements from the original game, from its high quality textures and detailed environments to the enhanced dynamic lighting and the smooth character animations.
Okay.
But the new summer setting also helps to bring out a very...
I gotta know in the comments, guys, what do you guys think so far after watching this video out of the two. Honestly, I think both games look amazing. Just one set in the summer and then one set in the winter. Obviously, in the winter, that game's what 8 years? Is it 8 years? Man, it's been that long, maybe more. But for me, I prefer the winter setting. I think it just like sucks you in more than anything. Not that it looks better, but I've always told people when people say, "Oh, the Division One looks so much better." And honestly, if you pay attention detail for detail, like he just did in this video, you could see there was a lot of improvements in the Division Two over the Division One. I got to know in the comments, what do you guys think? And I'll see you guys in the next one. Hey, nothing but skills out. Take it easy, everybody.